Alright guys, so in this video we got a couple things to do. So what we're going to be moving towards is storing new recipes in Google Firestore, and saving them to this, this given user. In order to do that, let's go ahead and take a look at a few of the steps we need to do. We need to do some housekeeping to make sure that things look really clean, because I think one of the things that you need to be really careful with this new non-JSON non-SQL database is that things can start to look very different. There can be a little bit of asymmetry between all the different things you're storing if you start changing things. So I like to make sure everything looks really good structurally, and then we'll start using that information into the database. Okay. So first thing I want to do is I need to make some modifications to this user structure. Okay. So let's go over to user structure, and I'm going to go over to structures. And for user, it's pretty crucial that one of the things we need to do is we need to add a new variable here called, we're going to call this established ID. Okay, so to differentiate between established ID and ID, I'll tell you what the point of this is going to be. Every time I create a new user object, I'm going to get a brand new UUID. And if this is the first time this user has been created, that UUID will go on to become their established ID forever. Okay, and for the duration of when the first instance that this user is running, established ID will be equal to UUID. But in the future, when I grab this user from the internet, okay, and I create a new user instance, what's going to happen is I'm going to rely on the established ID from now on. I'm no longer going to use this UUID ID for anything other than looping through with a for each or a list or something of that nature. Okay, sounds a little confusing, but the reason we're going about doing it this way is, to be honest, it allows us to always have one ID like this. That'll in the future allow us to continue using the for each loop, the list loop, all those kinds of things. So this is going to be a string, and it's going to be optional. Actually, no, sorry, it's going to be non-optional. So I'm going to save that. Now, what comes along with that now? So note, that's not optional. Okay, nothing in user so far is optional. So what comes along with that is we need a new initializer. Okay, so this initializer is going to have we need username. Okay, username string. We need password. We need name. And we need email. Okay, and lastly, we want ID string. Okay, and that one is going to be an optional string. Okay, and what we're going to say is we're going to say self.username, which when I do that, I'm referring to username up here. Self.username is going to be equal to username, and this username refers to the parameter that I'm putting into the initializer. Okay, so I'm saying whatever you write during the initialization will be stored into the object. Okay, so username is username, and I'm going to a couple times like that. Password, password. Name, name. Email, email. Okay, then I'll say if ID string, use if let. So if we're essentially saying if ID string is not nil, if let ID string equal ID string, so we're unwrapping it, then we're gonna let established ID equal to ID string. Otherwise, we'll say established ID string, or established ID is equal to ID dot, sorry, I need to put ID dot unwrapped, so our ID dot UUID string. Okay, so what is this saying? It's saying that if I don't explicitly tell you what the ID string, even just so we don't get confused, established ID, okay? Copy, copy, copy. Perfect. So what this, let's go ahead and say self dot So we are referring to the one out here. So we're saying, if I give you an established ID, meaning, for instance, that I got this from the database and I already have a ID for this user. So if that is not nil, then if I put it in, that means I have one already ready to go for this user. Otherwise, and the only time we'll actually run into this section here is when we're creating a new user for the first time. Literally, the next time they log in, we'll be using we will be instantiating established ID. Or putting a value in here, okay? That will not be nil, except for the first time during signup. Okay, so we'll save that. And first error, we're going to run into a couple we need to add right here. And we're going to say nil, okay? Notice when I put this underscore first, what that means is that I don't have to actually write, username is blah. I can just write blah. So instead, I didn't have to write established ID. I just wrote its value. I didn't have to do this, established ID. I could just do like that because I had that underscore, okay? All right, I'm going to save that. And then we have one other place where we do user.init. Let's find it. User.in. Okay, that's the first place. And the second place we do it, I guess we did not use that yet. So, okay, our user. So let's start with the user. Yes, here it is. The other place we use it is right here in login view. Okay, I'm gonna write .init. And the last thing I need to do, I just need to add one more, so that we're in the login view right now. We are in login view Swift, comma, and I'm going to give it a value of, let's see, actually, this is the first time we want to use it. So this right here, if you remember where we are in a function that is validating a login. So this is when we log in to an account that's already been created. And what we're doing is, if we've already created an account, the established ID is going to be, quite simply, if you go right here, the established ID is whatever the document ID is for this user within the user's collection. Okay, so we'll say, or actually, we just write document ID, and that's because up here, technically it's query snapshots documents, and then whatever index you're looking for. So document ID, and that's that. Okay. So you can read over that to get a better understanding. Okay, to remember how we got to here to begin with. Okay, so that takes care of that. All right. The next thing we need to do is we need to be able to save. One thing I didn't like that we did actually is user defaults. In the save user defaults, I don't like that we saved. This is last login underscore username and last login underscore password. I want to store the last logged in user as a whole. Instead of, like, what if I wanted their email and whatever? So now I have to do another one for email, another one for their name, and another one for their established ID. It's just too much. And it's not functional. It's not a good idea. So a better idea would be if instead, under user defaults, we could just store something called last login user. Okay? And we just store the entire current user. But now the problem is that not every object can be encoded and decoded using user defaults. So they have to actually adhere to two different rules, or I want to say structures or classes. What they need to adhere to is NS object and NS coder. So if we look at this note, we need to adhere to NS object and NS coding. So this snippet of code from here onwards is something I had from an old project that I worked on. So we need to make sure that we adhere to those two things. So save it. What we need to do, we need to go up to structs, enums, and classes. And where we see identifiable, we also need NS object and NS coder. And we will undoubtedly get an error saying that we don't have the proper protocol. So what we need to do is we need to include two things. We need to include required init. Okay. And we'll figure out what to write in each of them. Okay. And we also need to include this function encode. Okay. All right. So now that we did that, we need to actually put the proper things inside. So we need to put, we're going to use, this is the structure of what we need inside of the NSCoder. And this is what we need for items inside of the init. So what I'm going to put in here is I'm going to have this one say name. This one looks. So the next thing I need to do is I actually need to change this to a class in order for us to use an identifiable NS object, and this should say NS coding, not NS coder. And it'll likely tell us that we need to actually put the NS object first. Yep. So NS object. Okay. And from there, let's go ahead. And this needs to be, because none of these are optional, then we need to have, what we're trying to do is we're trying to decode the name, and if it doesn't work, then we need to put, when it needs to be equal to nothing. So I need to do this for every single one of the attributes here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all right. And this one will be ID. Okay, and it's going to be, this one's going to be established. Established ID. This one is going to be username. This is going to be password, name, and email. Okay, I'm going to grab that, put it in here. For each of these, you need to do this for every attribute. The only one that we need to actually fix this for is this right here. This should say as UUID. And what we'll need to do, let's see. Let's see if it likes that. We'll use UU. We'll just give it a new UUID. And let's see if it likes that. Alright, so that's good. Now when we go to the encode, we need to do the same set of things. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need one for ID. We need username. We need, established ID. We'll use this. Established ID. We need username. So remember, all this is to let us store a user class item in the user defaults, which will be pretty crucial later. A little bit of housekeeping. I know it's not the funnest, but it will be very useful later in our code. So username. Okay, established ID. Established ID. Okay, and now that we did that, what we should be able to do is hop over to look for user defaults in our program. We have that in helper func, and now we can actually just store, next time we save the user, we can actually just save it, we can save it as a current, we can save it as a user object instead of saving the username as the username string and the password string and thinking, oh man, we really wanted more information than just the username and password. So we'll do that, and then in addition, we'll go to the login page where we had set up our download or our load last user. And what we want to do right here, we said if if the user is successfully logged in, then I guess we didn't even actually set up the env.currentUser. Yeah, so what we want to do realistically is if the user was logged in from last time, then we need to grab the item. We can say if let last session if let saved user, or remembered, even better, user equal last session Which object are we looking for? We're looking for, we can go over to, with helper functions. We're looking for the last login underscore user. So we're going to go back to the login view. We grabbed that from in helper functions. We had saved, we had set up that dictionary to say the current user. When we save the default user, we're going to save it with the key last login user. So I'm taking that and going back to login view. Okay, and I'm going to say if remembered user is equal to last session, last login user, the value for that key, we'll say as user. So if that successfully occurs, then we will have env.currentUser will be equal to user. And that's probably going to say self. Or sorry, will be equal to this, remembered user. There we go. And else, well, we want to know two things. We'll just say else print couldn't unwrap user. And then just to make sure we know exactly what went wrong, I'm going to actually print the last session. And I'm also going to print last session and then that value at that key. Okay, now I'll say, and if we are successful, we'll put log and successful with remembered user. And then one more line, we'll put remembered user. That should do the trick now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my simulator, and I'm going to go home. I'm going to delete the app, okay? Delete it. I'm going to run it again. Okay. The reason I did that is because I wanted to get rid of all the previous user default data. I wanted to get rid of all the stuff that I had saved. The string. I wanted to get rid of the string form of the user's username and password, and I just want the object now. Okay. So, as of now, there was we couldn't unwrap data / last login objects. Okay, that's because we didn't have any. So we'll put cg and potato login. All right, saved successfully, and it actually even went forward. Okay, and now I'm going to run it again, and let's see if it was able to grab that user. And it said login successful with remembered user. So now we actually saved to the entire user object, which is no small deal. So now the next thing we need to do, we did all of this just so we could start. So I'm going to get rid of this part of our to-do list. Okay. The reason we did all of that is so that we could start setting up new recipes when we can actually start uploading new recipes. So let's go check out the next thing on our list. We wanted to get rid of one more thing. It's the last thing I'll do on this video, okay? I wanted to go to navigation bar title. I wanted this piece of code we've used before. We're setting a title of nothing and a navigation bar hidden, okay? And you have to do both of those because the hidden doesn't work unless there's a title also there. And I need to go to every single tab view, okay? Every single view in that tab view. And we need to go to the parent view, so navigation view here. And I'm going to add this to that, okay? So navigation bar title is nothing. What we were fixing, if you remember from the previous video, is now when I go to search, suddenly it's here again, right? When I go home, now we have this again. We don't want that. So I need to go to every single, forget about login view. We're going to do it on home view. We'll do it on the VStack. We're putting that line of code, okay? On search view. And while search view is somewhat irrelevant, we'll do it anyway. I'm going to put a ZStack because we know we're going to have one. It's inevitable. And then I put that text, I left that in there. We'll do it in me view. Same thing, Z stack. Okay, and lastly we'll do it in new post view, and I'm actually going to move new post view into that other folder. Okay, right there. All right, I'm going to drag this into tabs, by the way. Save and run, and everything should work like a charm. And we'll call it a wrap for this video. And then in the next video, we'll get moving on to creating new posts. We're going to do one more aesthetic fix. We're going to set up a half modal. So if you look in my description, I'm going to include a link to how we set up half modals. But if you know what a modal is, it's kind of like that sheet that is new in SwiftUI. So anyway, now if you see, none of these have navigation view tab bars up there. Or sorry, navigation bars up there, okay? So I'll see you guys in the next video, and yeah, thanks for watching.